Today, it's a team of the NFL's most loved players of all time versus a team of the NFL's most hated players of all time. The most loved roster will consist of players who are known to be loved by fans, have shown loyalty to their team, and have made a positive impact off the field. As for the most hated roster, they will consist of players who are known for their dirty play, trash talking, and their disloyalty throughout NFL history. We will then spin this wheel to see which challenges they need to face off in, and the first team to win 3 challenges will be crowned the champion. The team of the most loyal players of all time will be led by Dan Marino. He played his entire 17-year career with the Dolphins and also won the Walter Payton Man of the Year award. He will be QB1 on this roster, and backing him up is Drew Brees. At running back, Barry Sanders leads the way since he was beloved by almost all NFL fans. Joining him is Walter Payton, since he has an award named after him for his volunteer and charity work. And we can't forget about Franco Harris, who will be the starting fullback. Moving on to wide receiver, I added Calvin Johnson, Larry Fitzgerald, and Mike Evans for their incredible loyalty to the teams that drafted them. I also added Jerry Rice and Justin Jefferson to the team since they are 2 of the most loved wide receivers in NFL history. And how can you not love George Kittle, one of the funniest personalities in the game today, and joining him will be another fan favorite in Jason Witten. And to close out the offense for this team, Joe Thomas, Will Shields, Jason Kelsey, Zach Martin, and Andrew Whitworth will be protecting Dan Marino on the offensive line. And then on defense, one of the most loved players of all time is Aaron Donald. And he played his entire career with the Rams, going on to win a Super Bowl, and he will surely be a first ballot Hall of Famer. Fletcher will be joining him at defensive tackle. JJ Watt and Cam Hayward are both Walter Payton Man of the Year recipients, and joining them will be Reggie White. Now, moving on to the linebackers, I included Junior Seau at middle linebacker because he was a fan favorite in Chargers history. I also had to bring in Bobby Wagner since he was the heart and soul of that Seahawks defense. As for outside linebackers, I added both Derek Brooks and Thomas Davis Sr. since they both won the Walter Payton Man of the Year award. Moving on to cornerbacks, Rondé Barber and Darrell Green will lead the way. I also included Charles Tillman and Denzel Ward since he's loved amongst many NFL fans. Oh, and we can't forget about Troy Polamalu and Devin McCourty locking down the safety positions for their loyalty to their teams and the game they love. As for kicker and punter, I added Justin Tucker and Ray Guy. The team of the most hated players of all time will be led by Aaron Rodgers. He quickly went from being the most loved quarterback to the most hated in a span of a couple years. I also had to include Ben Roethlisberger to back him up for his immaturity and off-the-field issues. As for running backs, I have to bring in Saquon Barkley, who recently signed with a divisional rival, and backing him up will be Zeke. Moving on to wide receivers, and these were easy choices, bringing in Terrell Owens, Chad Johnson, Antonio Brown, Hines Ward, and Juju Smith-Schuster. All 5 are hated amongst their peers and fans. At tight end, we have Travis Kelce. Even though he's one of the greatest tight ends in NFL history, Kelce is hated because of his brash and outspoken attitude. And joining him is another big trash talker in Shannon Sharpe. We have to include the most hated offensive line that includes Trent Williams, Steve Wisniewski, Brian Jensen, Conrad Dobler, and Lane Johnson. I want to give a huge shout out to the sponsor of today's video, Football Head Coach 24. And it's a sim football game that's licensed with the NFLPA. Start with your very own franchise, and then you have to build it from the ground up. And as you can see, both my offense and defense could use some work. There's a few ways to improve your squad, like the transfer market where you can search for specific players to fit your squad. You also have the store where you can open different packs that are available, and one of my favorite options is completing player trade challenges to earn more packs and player rewards. Let's open this veteran pack real quick. All right, offense, wide receiver, quality is a rare gold. Let's go. Okay. We have 87 rated. Let's see who it is. Keenan Allen. Let's go. We needed that. Let's jump right into the springtime pack. Linebacker. We have a 93 rated. Eric Kendricks. Let's go. Now that we upgrade our team, you can also adjust your lineup to fit your team's strength. You know we gotta throw the ball to our receivers though. Jumping into a game, we start off with Ryan Tannehill finding Keenan Allen for the first score. Fast forwarding to the end of the game where we won 45-10. So if you're looking for a fun mobile football game, make sure to go download Football Head Coach in the App Store. The link is down below in the description of the video. The most hated player on the defensive side of the ball has to be Vontaze Burfict. He has earned the title as being the dirtiest NFL player of all time. Joining him will be Ray Lewis since he was fined by the NFL a couple times for an illegal hit. Moving on to outside linebackers, James Harrison and Bill Romanowski joined the most hated roster. As for right outside linebacker, I had to include Lawrence Taylor as being one of the most hated players in NFL history, mostly due to his off-field issues. At defensive tackle, we have Ndamukong Suh, a player notorious for his dirty style and also his terrible leadership. Joining him is Albert Hainsworth. Moving on to the defensive ends, I had to include Myles Garrett, Deacon Jones, and Julius Pepper. Continuing with the defense, let's bring in the most hated safeties in NFL history, starting with Rodney Harrison. Backing him up will be Jamal Adams. As for free safeties, Roy Williams and Bernard Pollard will join the team for their dirty play throughout their career. To close out the defense, Deion Sanders, Jalen Ramsey, Richard Sherman, Patrick Pearson, and Eli Apple will be the cornerbacks on their roster for their trash talking on and off the field. I brought in Martin Gramatica and Pat McAfee, spinning the wheel to see what the first challenge is going to be, and it lands on kick return. Both teams will get 5 attempts each to accumulate as many yards as possible. The most loved team starts first, and Walter Payton catches the ball at the 2-yard line and is able to run straight up the middle for 21 yards. On his next attempt, he corrals the ball and tries to stiff arm a defender, but is brought down for 20 yards. Last attempt for Walter Payton, and he is able to weave his way for a 22-yard gain, means they have a total of 63 yards so far. Barry Sanders is the next man up, and he takes the kickoff from his own 1-yard line, but he is quickly stopped after picking up 17 yards. On his very last attempt, he takes it and tries to go straight up the middle and ends up picking up 25 yards for a grand total of 105 yards. Deion Sanders is up first for the most hated team, and he is able to go straight up the middle for a solid gain of 20 yards. After receiving the ball from his 2-yard line, Deion was able to go right up the middle once again for another 20 yards. And on his last attempt, he's able to stay behind his blockers and picks up 24 yards for a total of 64 yards so far. Saquon is up next for the most hated team, and on his attempt, pretty much gets no blocking and only picks up 16 yards. They need a big gain here, and he's able to kick the ball from his 1-yard line. Then he ends up finding an opening on the right side of the field and picks up 55 yards for a total of 135 yards, which means they have won the kick return challenge. Spinning the wheel for the second time, and it lands on the franchise simulation challenge. Whichever team makes it the furthest in the season will win this challenge. That means to the very end of the regular season, both teams have a perfect 17-0 record. Both teams have a first round bye heading into the playoffs, but I have no idea who's going to come out on top. Dan Marino ended up leading the NFL with 5,000 passing yards, 59 touchdowns, and 10 interceptions, while Aaron Rodgers wasn't too far behind with 4,300 passing yards, 42 touchdowns, and just 6 interceptions. Barry Sanders led the NFL with over 2,000 rushing yards and a league-leading 23 touchdowns. Saquon wasn't far behind with 1,800 rushing yards and 19 touchdowns. The most loved team had 4 receivers with over 1,000 yards, while Hines Ward was the only receiver on the most hated team to break the 1,000-yard accomplishment. Sending right to the Super Bowl to see if either of the teams still remain in the hunt, and it looks like they both are. The most loved team ended up defeating the Colts in the divisional round, and then the Titans in the AFC Championship game, while the most hated team defeated the Vikings in the divisional round, and then the Seahawks in the NFC Championship game. It all comes down to this one game to see who wins the franchise challenge, and after simming, the winner is the most loved team. Absolutely destroyed them 35-7. And now the competition is tied at 1 after 2 challenges. Spinning the challenge wheel once again, it ends up landing on a head-to-head matchup. This game will be played in a neutral stadium, and on the most loved team's opening drive, Dan Marino connects with George Kittle for a big first down. They continue to move down the field with some nice runs by Barry Sanders, and then Dan Marino was able to connect with Calvin Johnson for a 20-yard pickup. Unfortunately, the most loved team could not get into the end zone and had to settle for a field goal. On the most hated team's opening possession, Aaron Rodgers was unable to pick up a first down, and they are forced to punt the ball back to the most loved players of all time. And Dan Marino makes them pay by throwing an absolute beam to Justin Jefferson for a 35-yard touchdown. After getting the ball right back, Barry Sanders was able to pick up plenty of yards before Dan Marino once again connected with George Kittle, who was able to score to extend the lead to 17. Down 24, Aaron Rodgers and the most hated team were able to get their first points with this rushing touchdown by Saquon Barkley. Unfortunately for the most hated team, Dan Marino and that lethal offense was able to answer right back with this incredible catch in the end zone by Calvin Johnson. And just like that, the most loved team of all time won the head-to-head challenge. Giving the challenge wheel another spin, it's going to land on the running back challenge. In this challenge, both teams will have 5 rushing attempts from the 5-yard line to see how many touchdowns they can score. First up, the most loved team, and Barry Sanders takes the first handoff and finds a hole to score a touchdown. On his second attempt, Barry takes the handoff and easily jukes his way into the end zone. But on his third attempt, Barry is stopped just short of the end zone and finished with 2 touchdowns on 3 attempts. Walter Payton is up next, and after taking the handoff, he is stopped almost immediately. But on their last attempt, he finds a hole and punches in for a total of 3 touchdowns on 5 attempts. Saquon Barkley is up first for the most hated team, and he is easily able to score the first touchdown. He then followed it up with another easy touchdown before making a defender miss with a juke move to go 3 for 3. Zeke now gets his 2 chances, and on his first attempt, the most loved defense swarms him for a stop. Score and the most hated team win this challenge. Zeke takes the handoff and fights his way into the end zone to win the running back challenge and ties the competition at 2. After spinning the wheel to see what the last challenge will be, it ends up landing on the wide receiver defensive back challenge. 3 receivers on each team go one-on-one with the opposing team's best corner. The most hated team won the last challenge, so they will go first, and on their first attempt, Rodgers throws a perfect pass to Terrell Owens, who gets them on the board. On their second attempt, Owens is able to get the step on Barber and just barely hangs on to it for the second touchdown. Next up is Chad Johnson, and on their third attempt, he makes a leaping catch and scores a touchdown. On their very next attempt, Rodgers completely overthrows Johnson and are unable to stay perfect. Antonio Brown is the last receiver up, and Rodgers once again sails his pass. On their last attempt, Rodgers is able to connect with Antonio Brown, but Rondé Barber is there to tackle him immediately. The most hated team were only able to score 3 touchdowns on 6 attempts. Dan Marino and the most loved team are up next, and on their first attempt, he is able to connect with Justin Jefferson, who hangs onto the ball and fights his way into the end zone. On his very next attempt, Marino throws a perfect ball, and Jefferson goes up and makes the grab in the end zone. Calvin Johnson is up next, and he is easily able to beat Deion Sanders and make the catch for the touchdown. On his second attempt, Dan Marino is sacked before the ball got out of his hand. The most loved team just needs one more touchdown, and on Jerry Rice's first attempt, he beat Deion off the line and makes the stumbling grab in the end zone. The most loved team ended up scoring 4 touchdowns to win the wide receiver defensive back challenge, and more importantly, win the entire competition by a score of 3 challenge wins, the most hated teams too. If you enjoyed this video, YouTube thinks you'll enjoy this one. I think you will too, so go check it out.